Hi, my name is Bjorn Ankerson, and I'm doing my project on the Troubles. The Troubles is a conflict in Northern Ireland from 1969 to 1998, with ending in the Good Friday Agreement. Um, in Ireland, the UK and Irish were, um, well, the UK has been in control of Ireland for hundreds of years. Um, the Irish have revolted a few times in 1998. And in 1916, with like the start of the IRA, which is the Irish Republican Army, and they won the War of Irish Independence in 1921 and were officially a state in 1948. The conflict arose, but before it really kicked off in like the 1960s. Um, so Ireland, Northern Ireland, it's on the same island, but Northern Ireland stayed British after the War of Irish Independence because of its large Protestant population, and there's still a Catholic population there, but it is a minority, and Ireland is a massively Catholic population, and so for housing, or well, not necessarily housing, but in voting, um, Protestants uh, controlled most of the land, and it was land based, not one person, one vote policies in the region, which made it an unfair representation of all of the people living in Ireland, as um, Protestants owned most of the land and a lot of Catholics didn't. And so a lot of also Catholics would be living in one. Um, you have like a family living in one house, and sometimes they don't even own the house. And if they own the house, that's one vote. Very bare bones, basic way of describing that. And so people were protesting, and eventually led to riots, and then it escalated into a fight for independence and trying to get um, Northern Ireland to become part officially of the rest of Ireland. So the two main parties involved is the IRA. So the Irish is the Irish Republican Army. They're important to study because they actually split into many different groups, which really led to their downfall. But they split into the two main ones, is the PIRA and the OIRA. The PIRA is the Provisional Irish Republican Army. The OIRA is the Original Irish Republican Army. And so they were trying to fight for one Ireland, but at many times they became in odds against each other, and then there are numerous other insurgency IRA groups which came out, and yeah, so they were conducted a lot of series of bombings, a lot of public bombings in public spaces such as like pubs were very popular, and hits and execute trying to kill British soldiers and policemen and other loyalist groups. The bombings eventually went into London and other places within the UK, mainland UK, not just Northern Ireland, and that just region itself. On the British side, or more loyal British / loyalist side, you have the RUF, which is the police force in Northern Ireland, and the UVF and UDA, which is the uh, um, Ulster Volunteer Force, and the UDA, the Ulster Defense Alliance, I believe it's called. So they're based in Northern Ireland, but these are predominantly Protestant groups who are trying to fight for loyalists. And I say Protestant Catholic a lot, and because it seems like it is a religious fight, but it's not. Actually, if you look at other instances after the conflict is over, you'd see that they actually haven't um, uh, been fighting over religious reasons, but it just happened to be that way given the demographics of the region. Yeah, and so for the British military as well, they implemented a lot of British forces as the conflict started to get heated uh, in Belfast and other heavily populated areas in Northern Ireland. They also went into secure the border of between the UK and the Republic of Ireland so that they can limit the amount of people and equipment that would be harmful for or that would be used for terrorism, things like that. Well, these organizations, these like the IRA, PIRA, or OIRA, these are terrorist organizations. As I said before, they bombed a lot of heavily populated areas, such as bars was a big one, car bombings, and a lot of the people infected by this violence on both sides were actually mainly civilian, not military targets. And so the end of the conflict really resulted in, because of the amount of civilian death in the region, people were just getting fed up and they didn't want to fight anymore. They kind of didn't care where the violence was coming from or what country they were really a part of. They just wanted, their neighbors to not kill them, not blow up their neighbors. It was just a really horrific event because these people are really our neighbors, are not like distant or ethnically very different at all, minus religious beliefs. So for the so it's also like splintering as well, and infighting amidst the different IRA factions was really the downfall of the insurgency. For the effectiveness of the counterinsurgency, they were effective in some ways, which they meant to be effective, but militarily it's almost impossible to fight and win in a purely militaristic sense, because these are just really average Joes. They're not wearing a uniform or anything, and they're all parts of all sorts of different groups. Also, in compartmentalization is really big in the IRA, being that people didn't really know, like the distance between the top guys and the trigger men, the people doing the jobs and the dirty work were so separate that it was very difficult to find and like track down top members to really try to bring end to the conflict, and it was very popular too amongst many people. So there was never a shortage of, at least at the time, of people willing to partake in violence. But back to the roles of the counterinsurgency, they did well in what they sought out to do. The UK was very good at forensics and being able to, they were quite ruthless, really, in jailing and taking in people who may or may not be partaking in terrorism. They just started bringing everybody in. Not everyone, but they would bring in a lot of people who deserved or didn't deserve to be imprisoned in places and in internment camps such as like Long Cache. And they're also good at, their job was preventative measures, not necessarily to be offensive, but defensive. And they were good at like stopping arms coming in from Libya and the U.S. into the hands of terrorists. And in Libya, Samtex coming from there as well. The conflict officially or technically ended in 1998 with the Good Friday Agreement, which put an end to the violence in agreement with the major IRA groups, and the British. They kind of just generally agreed to stop the troubles, or just the series of violence. Although there were groups, even now, who are against the Good Friday Agreement and still continue to try to cause violence and pursue the cause of one Ireland militarily, opposed to uh, uh, using diplomacy.